Welcome back, Rebels.
Do it yourself.
Yeah, you should do it yourself. If no one's going to give you the option, then sometimes you have to take it into your own hands.
We don't though, often, do we? I think it's like one of the most bravest things in the world is to just take that initiative and start something yourself. And I think that we are trained to just join things that are already a success, that are already up and running. And I mean, I suppose things are changing. Like podcasting is huge, but still the majority of people listening to this don't think, oh, I could do a podcast.
It's just kind of the way the whole school system works. It sets you up as a way to go and join something. It's like you do your education in a way to get a job, which is effectively joining another company, joining someone else's mission, joining something else that someone else has created. And you rarely get that, say, that no one really teaches you, well, you can just go and start something yourself. It sounds like so simple, but the way that our whole lives is kind of like led always lead to this going to join someone else's thing rather than building your own.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, it is all about happiness. And if you can join a team that's going in the same direction that you want to go, then that's absolutely great. Because, and I suppose it comes down to self-awareness of that question that I think is the most important question, which is, what do you actually want? And most people don't know what they actually want. And as soon as you can find out what you want, then you can work out the ways to get to it. And if one thing that you want, there's already someone else going about doing that and you can help them, then that's cool. But a lot of times the thing that you want doesn't exist in the world. So it's your mission to then go and make that thing exist.
I think that's important, the fact that the thing you want might already exist and it might be there already. So, and there's someone who could potentially just give that to you. And that's going to save you a hell of a lot of work. For example, if you just want to, if there's a specific job that you would just love to have more than anything in the world, and that job exists and there's an opening for it and you've got the experience, then go and do that, because that's going to save you so much headache. But if there's that job exists and you don't have the experience for it, and maybe you apply for it and get rejected, and another one comes up and you apply for it and you get rejected, and it's just this constant, like, you never have the experience to get there, then you kind of end up in this bit of a catch-22 where you haven't got the experience to get that job, but without doing the job, you can't get the experience. So I think the only option there to break out of that catch-22, to get out of that cycle, is to start something on your own.
Whenever we get profiled or featured anywhere, they always describe us as like the anti-9-to-5 guys, and it's like they've missed the point. Like, that totally isn't us. Like, we're actually very pro 9-to-5 if you can find it, something that makes you happy, but just because it's so much fucking easier. But you're absolutely right. Like, especially if you are trying to get a job with someone, if you're approaching them with no experience, with no portfolio, building your own portfolio first is so valuable. And like, you have such a huge advantage because no one does that. Like, everyone has their own personal Instagram account, but it's of no value when they go and step into an interview. But if you can show them an account that's like, look, I've got 1,000 followers here who are engaged with this collage work that I make, and that's, do you know what I mean? That you bring something.
No matter what it is you want to go for, you can start to build that experience on your own. Like, if you want to become a print designer and you've applied to every fashion house to do prints for them and they've all rejected you, but you've never actually gone and made a print off your own back, it's just something you might want to do, then I don't blame them for not giving you a job. Whereas, if you can prove that you can create some amazing prints, like, actually with places like that, it won't all come down to just what you studied at university. Most of the time for good design companies, it's going to come down to what your portfolio is and what you can do. Because it's like, if I'm running a creative business and I need a creative to come and work for me, what education you've got doesn't really matter too much. If I can see that I can see you can do the thing. Like, if you can prove that you can do that and do it well, and without anyone else helping you, you've gone and done it on your own, then you're so valuable. And that might actually turn into something that you don't actually end up going to get that job that you wanted to get, because you actually just enjoy doing it and you just carry on and it becomes a success on its own. But building that portfolio and really trying and like developing to be able to present to a potential employer of like, oh, this is what I can do, is just like, it's the way to go.
I think maybe this is me like delving a little bit too deep into this, but it makes me think about like people having this end goal, and really like there is no end goal. Like your working life, you're going to be working probably for the foreseeable future. Like most people are working for most of their lives. There's sort of this twilight period at the end where people have this quote unquote retirement. I mean, it doesn't need to be quote unquote, it's just a retirement. But there's this end, like there's this end utopia at the end, which is retirement. The people who are happy and fulfilled in their jobs, they want to carry on working, and they hate the idea of retirement. Like so that means I stop doing the thing that I love. And I've really been thinking recently, it's like all this hard work, if this pays off, it's going to allow me to carry on doing more hard work. That's how I feel about everything at the moment. And it's like, that's a really beautiful thing of like, I don't want to do all this hard work to then not have to do any hard work. And it's maybe what people don't want to hear. I think, that being said, like if you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably not one of those ones that's like, I want to just sail off into a yacht somewhere and go and be something boring. It's like you are set on fire by the thing that you do, the thing that you love, and that's what you want to carry on doing that for a long time.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I say about kind of trying to have a like 52 weeks of the year that you enjoy doing rather than just the 4 weeks you'd have as holiday, and like not living for just those 4 weeks. I suppose that comes into a broader life thing of don't work for something you don't like doing for the next 40, 50, 60 years so you can have a good little bit of fun at the end. It's really important to be able to enjoy that journey as you go along and make sure that the journey you're on is something you enjoy doing. And yes, it's going to have its hard parts and it's going to be miserable at times. But as long as you're always working towards something that makes you happy, I think that is absolutely key.
And there's going to be different parts of everyone's working life that are really important to them. So it might be the actual craft and the actual process, like the thing that you make. It might be, so say you make a podcast, it might be like the editing that you really love. Or it might be the interaction that you get from your fans. If you sell dresses and every DM that you get that's a selfie of someone wearing your product, that's the thing that sets you on fire. It's like, it's finding those and being really aware to let those in, like those moments that bring you joy. It's because I've started to realize, like, it's not the process of painting that sets me on fire. Like I definitely do get into flow state, and then I release a 15-second video of it, and that 15 seconds is a breakdown of what's taken 6 or 7 hours. And it's like, that's a long time. And if you're outside and you're in the cold and whatever, it's like, it's like happiness is not this like permanent, like I'm not up on the roof going, this is amazing. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not filled with adrenaline as I walk up and down a rickety ladder.
Yeah, you're not just walking around in life on this absolute high.
Yeah, that's like a myth. It's like I'm really happy, and I'm glad that I'm going to go and stand outside in the cold for the next 6 hours. But it's not the process that's bringing me the happiness. It's getting into flow state. It's developing. It's seeing. Is learning the medium, even 20 years in of using a spray can, like still learning new things and seeing the way that the paint behaves. And it's all of those little things that I take notice of rather than just the whole process of painting. And then also I get a load of, like, I think any creative gets so much from like sharing the thing that they've made and going, look, here's something I did, and getting people to tell you whether they love it or hate it.
Yeah, that reminds me of just people we've had on the show who are from like a foodie kind of background, where it's like the process is obviously like making the food, but then as soon as you can share it with other people and someone else says, this is delicious, then there's so much reward in that. And going back to what we were talking about at the start, it's like, if you want to be a chef or something, it's like by just making the food and sharing it with people on your own, then if you can, then you'll learn to develop and you will get better. And then if you applied to work in a kitchen, or you opened your own restaurant, like it all comes down to all of the work you put into it just off your own back because you enjoyed doing it, because you wanted to get better at your craft over time. It's that, like, doing it yourself is what's going to make success happen.
Yeah, having the bravery to take that leap, because there's people believe that there's going to be this magic moment where all of a sudden they're ready for it. You're never going to be ready for it. Like every time that you go into a new venture, it is a leap of faith. But like just have the confidence. And I mean, so I wish that when I was like 21, 22, I listened to this interview that we're about to listen to with Tori West, because like at that age I had no clue what I was doing, and I didn't think that I could do it myself. I didn't think that that was an option to like the way she started Bricks magazine. It's like, it's a labor of love. It's something that she decided that she was going to make a magazine. Like, if you said to 20-year-old me, you can make a magazine, what? No, I can't. But she's done it. It's totally possible. So whatever it is, like if you want to make a TV show, that sounds impossible. If you want to make a movie, it sounds impossible. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to like whatever your idea is, it is totally possible. And this is proof. And when you think of everything that Tori had going against her, like in terms of the system, in terms of like the background that she came from, everything going against her, and she's still gone ahead and done it. It's really inspiring.
Creativity is just, it's so powerful in the way that you don't need to have all of the best equipment, the best team in the world to make something a success. You just need to create something that's good enough that a certain amount of people enjoy. And as you were talking there about like making a film and stuff, making a TV show, it reminds me of there's a guy on YouTube I watch called Casey Neistat, and he years ago had a show on HBO which was just recorded with a handheld video camera, just of him and his brother living their daily life, and they just packaged it into something that could be sold to a TV company, and the TV company bought it and just completely changed their lives. And even when you think of stuff like Jackass, like that is just started as such a basic concept of just some friends having fun, being silly and recording it and selling that to a TV network, and now you've got a TV show. It's just the element of actually going to do it. And it's like, I guarantee, like I don't know their backgrounds, but I bet Johnny Knoxville 10 years before Jackass launched was walking around with a video camera just recording stupid things. I bet it was something that he'd been doing for years and years and years beforehand. And I think that is the important thing, to just go out and start doing the thing before you even need it, because when it actually comes around to it and you actually want to think, I'm going to make a TV show, then you've already started to build up that skill to actually go and do that.
Yeah, believe in yourself. You're probably capable than more than you can imagine. So that brings us beautifully on to this week's guest, which is Tori West. Tori West is a writer, publisher, part-time cleaner, which we'll get into later, and the editor of Bricks magazine. Tori provides honest insight into the creative industries and what it takes for many of us to support our creative careers. She champions the underdog and smashes preconceptions, giving a voice to the young, the working class, to LGBTQ creators, and to any group that isn't given the opportunities that they deserve.
In this episode, we talk about making a magazine, side hustles, and young creatives.
Boom, boom, boom.
That's your opinion on emerging creators, that you didn't think that I could produce that because I'm a student, and that's the whole bloody problem.
Yeah.
Hi, Tori.
Hi.
Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we were having a little talk before we started this podcast, and I was bigging you up massively because I think you're amazing. You are so honest, and I think it's really fucking important, and I think it's really like cool to get across to, especially to freelancers. Like, it's okay to support yourself. It's okay to pay your bills, and it's okay to like do what you love as much as you can. And if that pays your bills, great. But if not, you still have to survive. So like, what do you do to survive?
So I run Bricks magazine. I've been doing that for the past 6 years. So I guess that's probably what I'm most known for. And I'm also a freelance writer, and I'm also a part-time cleaner. I have multiple streams of income because Bricks has never, for the first 3 years, like I didn't take a penny. It was just me kind of self-funding everything. Then after 3 years, it was kind of, I'd have like the odd brand partnership, and that's when brands kind of like took me a bit more seriously. And I remember having a meeting with one of my distributors at the time, and he was like, no one will take you seriously until issue 7. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally at this pace. I'm doing one a year. Like, no one's going to be taking me seriously for years. So I need to think of other ways to make money because I want to be able to afford and fund to do what I love.
Why do you think that is the issue 7 thing? Is it because most people quit before the 7th one?
I think it's changed a lot now, to be honest, because now there was like at the time when I first started Bricks, there wasn't this like huge independent publishing boom as there is now. Like zine culture is kind of like rebirthed in London, and I think there's a lot of people now like thinking of considering at uni as like you can do a lot of people's final major products. You have like a magazine as like an option that you can submit as a thing. So it was like, now I think it's not like that at all, but back when I started Bricks 6 years ago, that wasn't really so much a thing. There was only like a handful of independents. And I lived in Bristol at the time actually, and it was actually the boys from Crack magazine that inspired me to do it, because I was like, these guys that I'd met had just been doing it in their bedrooms, and I was like, if they can do it, like I can do it. So that's kind of like where that comes from. But in terms of like the financing to like survive situation, I've never had any money. I grew up in like a really low income background. I grew up on a council estate. I wanted to go into publishing. I never thought that was like an accessible job for me, because in Wales the only sort of like publishing industry is kind of like the mainstream news press. There's no like magazine space there, especially with like fashion and arts culture. And I'm a massive believer that it's really difficult to know that you can be something that you can't see.
100%.
So that was like a massive thing for me. So that's why I'm so vocal. So I'm always very vocal about everything that I'm doing, because I think no one speaks openly about their side hustles and things. Like no one talks about how hard it is in the industry to like make money, especially if you're from like a low income background, you know?
Yeah, so when you were a kid and you're like living in council estate and you're really interested in publishing and obsessed with magazines, like what was the disconnect there when you're buying a publication like Vogue and you're seeing this kind of, was it aspirational for you, or did it bring you down? Like how did it make you feel?
I had such a weird relationship with magazines, like growing up, like for a multitude of different reasons. Like I think the main thing was coming from a working class background and living in this like tiny place in Wales. There was one magazine store that was like a newsagent, and I loved it in there. It had like thousands of magazines in there, but it was like more kind of like the weird annuals that you would buy, like the kids annuals that you'd collect over time, like the Rugrats Around the World magazine, like things like that, which I loved. And then there was also Asda. And obviously we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but my mum's way of engaging me with the cleaning and the housework and doing all my chores was, if you do it on a Friday when I go to the shop, I'll buy you one magazine and a pack of strawberry laces. And that was like my and those are like my two favourite things now still. It's like a pack of strawberry laces and a magazine. And so I'd get these magazines and then I'd go home and then I'd look through them all and be like, I love the design and I love like looking at a full page. And it wasn't necessarily what was in there, because everything that was in there was so inaccessible to me. I couldn't open a magazine and see myself like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to afford that like $4,000 cardigan.
Yeah.
And I used to sit there and I used to drive my mum mad. And because obviously we didn't have a lot of money. And I'd be sat there and every Saturday, I'd like wake up in the morning and I'd get all my magazine archive out and they'd be all over the floor, and I'd be ripping everything out of them and sticking them in notebooks, like the bits I liked. And my mum would come upstairs and I'd be like, oh my God. And she's like, I can't believe you're doing it again. You're ripping up all those magazines that I bought you. And I was like, but Mum, they're crap. We can't afford anything in them anyway. I'm making them better. So it's like, even at like a young age, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I was actually making zines. But I didn't know that at the time because no one around me was
curating your own content.
Yeah. And I think another thing, apart from, everything being really inaccessible to me, like my generation grew up in this world of publishing where it was built around the shame of women's bodies. Like it was literally, you'd have like magazine covers, like at the newsagents, literally circling women, the flaws, what they considered flaws on women's bodies. So I think now it's like independent publishing now is like we've really gone against that. And I really admire everyone who are kind of like not in mainstream publishing now, because it's kind of like we used all those things and we're just like, this isn't right, and kind of broke it down and did it ourselves. So I really admire people who do that.
It's so interesting. By cutting out the pieces that you did like and then discarding the bits that you didn't, you've kind of carried that forward, and now you've kept the bits that you did like and discarded all the stuff you didn't.
Well, I've always wanted, so when I was younger, but I thought it was quite embarrassing that I didn't want to admit that I wanted to do writing, because I went to an all Welsh language school, so my first language is actually Welsh. All my education was in Welsh. The only like kind of English lesson I had was English for like 3 hours a week, maybe like 3 lessons a week. So I wasn't confident like in my written English whatsoever, and I'd feel really embarrassed when people would be like, what do you want to do when you're older? And I always knew that I was like, I want to be a writer, I want to be in magazines, I want to write books. And I just didn't have the confidence. And I remember in my GCSEs, which sounds so ridiculous now, because anyone doing their GCSEs right now, that's really important. But looking back on it now, I thought it was like the be all and end all of my life. And I molded my entire view of what I thought I could do based on what my teachers were telling me. So my teacher would be like, you will never be a published writer because your English isn't good enough. And I was predicted an E in my English GCSE. So I was like having none of it. And I studied, and I managed to get it up to a B in the end. But that still wasn't enough to give me like enough confidence to think I could be a writer, because I just thought I was crap, because that's what, and I didn't know any writers. Do you know what I mean? So I thought I'd have to go into admin or finance or something, because I knew more people doing like practical, or I guess like really financy jobs that you think you should go to uni for. So I found that really difficult, and I went to uni and I did the wrong course. So I went on to do fashion, which was great because it was like bracketed. So it's like, instead of just doing fashion journalism, or you kind of go into your subject straight away, it was all under the thing of fashion. So luckily I could change, but I spent like 1.5 years on fashion design and I hated it. Like I literally hated it, but I only thought because I was creative, my mum was a seamstress. That's all I saw. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And like, I literally hated it. Like I couldn't do pattern cutting. Like I never went in. Like I literally didn't want to be there at all. And then I begged. I found out someone was making magazines on the communication course. And I remember begging my tutor, being like, I'm going to leave. I'm so unhappy. Like, please, can I switch over the course? And it was like the best thing I ever did. So then when I was like 20, that's when I realized what it was that I enjoyed doing. And it was just making magazines. That's all I wanted to do after that. But it was weird that from a young age I was doing it, but because no one around me was telling me what it was and I didn't see it, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So it took me years to like figure out what it was that I was really passionate about.
I think there's something in looking back to your childhood to work out what it is you like to do, because quite often when you were growing up, there was no pressures in the world. There was no, you've got to do this to make money. You just do it because it's generally fun and you like doing it, because you've got X amount of time to just play. So it's interesting to look back and be like, well, what did I do when I just played? Because sometimes if people now are currently in a bit of a rut and they're like, I just don't know what I like doing, like maybe looking back can help like unearth those things that you actually used to love doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like in all the hardness of 2020 and everything that's going on, I think actually one of the benefits that's come out of this year is that people have started actually figuring out what it is that they love doing beyond their day job, because that's so important. Like, you're way more than your day job, whether you love it or not. You still should have like other interests, and like it's unhealthy for me to think that like bricks is my entire life, but is unhealthy to think that. I think you should have like lots of different, because when that gets stressful, you feel like your entire life is stressful, you know? So I think that's the nice thing of this year, is that people have actually taken time out and realized what they love. And also we stopped kind of making art for Instagram and things now. We've started doing it as a form of, like, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden we stopped making art for ourselves and it wasn't our outlet anymore. We just started making 100%. It for Instagram.
Yeah, I think that was a really nice thing at the start of lockdown, where there was that massive shift in creativity and people being like, well, I've now got this time this time that I've been so busy, head down in my job, that I haven't allowed myself to have any time. So then they've been like, okay, well, let's be creative. Let's actually give myself some time to try and get my mental health back, like to just appreciate creativity again and to do something for myself rather than for other people. And I think it was so nice to see that develop in people being like, actually, well, I'm not just going to make this to make money to do as a job. I'm going to do this because actually I've got time for the first time in years to actually sit and take some time for myself.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's interesting. I think that's like one of the nicest things that's come out of this year, definitely. I remember early in lockdown, actually, I went on as Joe Charlie XCX did that whole album in lockdown, basically, and I thought it was amazing because I hadn't seen an artist do something like that. And her management had asked me to go on the kind of like first Q&A that was on a Zoom call. And she was telling me how she just started painting rocks and she'd found out that she really enjoyed rock painting. And I was like, you're literally, I see you as like one of the most successful music artists. It's like probably so busy. And you're telling me you're just sat in your house in LA painting rocks. And I just think that's like a really nice thing to do, you know. It's like you think that you do have to have these other things that you're doing to keep you calm. Because I think especially as a creative, when you make your, like I've somehow, I don't know how, and I never thought this would be my life, but I've made my hobby my job. And that's amazing. Yeah. But it's like I don't want to ever hate my job. So when it gets stressful and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do need other avenues to calm me down because I've made the thing that did calm me down my stressful job, you know? Yeah.
I was watching, I don't know if you've seen it, there's like a new documentary on Netflix at the moment called The Social Dilemma, which is like fascinating. It's all about kind of like the algorithms and basically how they've basically built these like technology platforms to just keep you as addicted as possible, and they'll just react to, if you haven't used it for a while, then start to ping you things to get you back. And it really made me think, because I was like, well, what is the solution to that? Like, how can you get away from that? And I feel like creativity is that little escape. It's like, that's a time where you're just on your own, you're away from all of these things binging at you, and it's like, you're free. It's like a little bit of freedom. And I think that's what people have really kind of grabbed onto within lockdown, is because they're finally free. Their brain's finally like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, obviously there's a lot of shit going on in the world, but my brain's relaxed for the first time in however many years.
It's really nice to see. Really nice to see.
It's being able to like kind of reframe it as well, as because like a lot of times we see what we do as work, but like being able to reframe our work as actually our freedom. Like our work is the thing that's allowing us to escape.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did Bricks come about?
So it was actually, as I was kind of like saying earlier, but it was my final major project for uni. And that's how I ended up starting it. And it was actually, again, like me, basically everything I do is because I get angry about something. And it's my way of counteracting how it makes me feel. So like content for me and making things is my kind of, this makes me feel really crap, or I'm really angry. And that's why I'm so political in the magazines, because I get absolutely wild about politics. And then I have to counteract it somehow to make myself feel better. So it's kind of like almost a selfish thing that I need it to keep me feeling okay. And when I was in my final year, they were like, you need to make a magazine, but it has to be all your own work, all your own styling, all your photography, all your own writing and design. And I was like, yeah, okay, I understand why you're giving me this project, because it's, I'll learn how to do everything, which is great. I needed to learn how to do that. But then at the same time, I was like, that's so unrealistic. Why would I do that? So I listened to the brief and I did this magazine, I can't remember what it was called, and put that in with all my final work and put it in as like my final major project. And then I made Bricks as like literally like a 64-page test print, like I slipped in, and I collabed with like a load of different photographers, artists to like bring it together. So I was like, this is what it would look like if I was in the industry. And I didn't tell my uni I was doing it, because sometimes I've learned that teachers will do things where they'd be like, no, don't do that. And I'm like, but I want to do it. So I just didn't tell them. And I set it up like a proper magazine. So I I was really secretive about it. And I remember I changed my name inside it. I set up an Instagram. No one knew who ran this magazine. And then when it got to Graduate Fashion Week, people were stopping me and being like, I didn't know this was a student magazine. I've seen it on Instagram. Like, I didn't know it was a graduate project. So it's like, and because I literally was just like, no, I want to do this like properly. And it's that, and that's when I realized that comment from Graduate Fashion Week was like, that's your opinion on emerging creatives, that you didn't think that I could produce that because I'm a student, and that's the whole bloody problem.
Yeah.
You think because I'm an emerging creative that I can make work that's the standard that should be in mainstream publishing, and that's what really upset me, and that's why I carried it on, was because it's kind of like, no, I wanted to prove a point. And that's, so it's like I started just to prove a point to my uni that this is how you shouldn't make a magazine. And then after that comment, I was like, this is why I'm going to carry it on. And it's kind of always had that same kind of attitude, to be honest with you.
And people wonder why like imposter syndrome is a thing. It's because we're being told consistently, like, you'll never be good enough. This is not. And what I love about your story is that a lot of times, like, we have like really, really successful creators on here, and I think for a lot of people listening, it's always difficult when they say something like, because I've done this, you can do this. But like that's because people have these internal hurdles that they need to get over, because literally you were like, I can do this, you did do this, and now you're like interviewing huge celebrities. Like, it's given you a platform, it's a place where you can voice your opinions, you can bring about discussion, huge collaboration. Like, this is all off of your own back. It's like,
I think one of the things when I look back on it is that I am so, even, I don't know whether it's imposter syndrome, I don't know. I'm so underqualified for what I do. When I get things given to me, I'm like, I have to learn still on the spot, because I didn't do like an internship at a magazine. I couldn't afford to. Like, I couldn't afford to live in London for free. I couldn't, like, all these things I didn't have access to. So I fucked up, I've made mistakes, and I've learned it all off my own back. I don't know internally if other magazines run the way I do. I don't know. The only experience that I had at another publication is that I had like a small brief stint of my life, which moved me to London actually, was I worked at ID for like 4 months as a social editor, and I hated it. I love ID, but I hated the job, like, because it was just me posting things, and I hate Instagram, like I hate social media. So I was like, actually, this isn't creative, this is like analytics, and this is driving me to the point of no return. So I couldn't do that. But no one realizes that like I have no industry experience really. So now when like mainstream publications come to me, so like last year, I was like so proud of myself. It's like one of my proudest achievements, and it sounds so basic. But when I was younger, all the magazines I used to buy were like obviously Condé Nast or Elle. I liked Elle because it seemed a little bit more accessible than Vogue, so I used to buy it more.
Yeah.
And I got to write in print. I got asked to write an article in print for Elle last year, and I was like, what? And then when I got it, I was like so happy, and I was like, this is to my teacher that told me I was going to fail and I'd never be a published writer. Now I'm in Elle. So it's one of those things, is like, you have to, I think the most invaluable lesson that I've learned, in all honesty, is realizing that if you want to start something yourself, you have to work on your flaws. And at school, they always tell you, do what you're good at, concentrate on one thing. You can't have multiple things. Like, even my dad would be like, you have to be good at one thing to be good at it. And I was just like, that to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if I run a business, I'm so scared used to be so scared of answering the phone. I'm still like it sometimes. I'm scared of someone being like, give me money that I haven't paid like 10 years ago, and it's the police or something. Like, it's my intrusive thoughts, like hypothetical, like ridiculous worrying. But I was like, I need to get over this, because I'm always going to be the main contact for everything. So I'm going to have to get over that. So I literally got a job in a call center. And I worked there for 6 months. So I had to be on the other line and call them, call people. And I hated it at first. And then actually I really enjoyed it, because I just got to spoke to like elderly people all day who just really wanted to have a nice chat with me. And it got me over that fear. And I think that's like a huge thing that no one gets taught, is how you need to work on the things that you're not actually okay at. And it's okay to fail and it's okay to fuck up, because actually you'll never do it again. If someone tells you not to do something and you don't understand the consequences of it, like oh my God, like a few years ago, I sent something to print in RGB and the covers come back like literally burnt. And there was like 5,000 copies that had to get sent back, and I had to blame it on the printer, and I knew it was me. And I was like, you've messed up the covers, it's not me, because I couldn't afford to print it again. And then they changed them for me and realised what happened, and like were really nice to me and changed all the covers for me. But I would never do that again. Ever. Like you would never do that again. Like, because that's the most like ridiculous thing to do. Like you have to fuck up and you have to work on like your flaws and your failures, I think, to get where you're at. And when you do make your job and you do things like that, you do always feel like imposter syndrome because you've made your own job. And there's no like straight white cis man being like, who's usually the boss, being like, well done, Tori, you've done a good job. Like it's just you. And that's it. That's really hard.
I feel like the idea of working on your weaknesses is something that I feel like it's probably the school system that kind of gets it out of us. Because if you think like in year 7 at school, you're doing like 15 subjects, and then you go to GCSE and it narrows down again, and you only do the things that you're good at, and then A level goes down again, uni get down to 1. It like all sends you down one path.
Yeah, they only let you do. Sorry to cut you across. I was just like, oh my God, yeah, it's true. They don't actually let you do the subjects that you want to do. Like I remember, like they wouldn't let me do. I knew what I wanted to do. I only wanted to do creative stuff. So I was like, I want to do art. I want to do textiles. And they're like, no. And I was like, well, why not? And they're like, you can't do that because they're both art subjects. And I was like, well, that's why I want to do it, because that's what I want to do. I need them both to get into the uni that I want to do. Like, I'm not picking one or the other. You have to give it to me. And then I ended up moving schools. So it's like, I think that's really like a bad system. Like you should, and just because someone's bad at something doesn't mean that they don't enjoy it. If you put them on the course, they might learn more and might get quite a lot out of it. And it's what they want to do.
I think I was really lucky at school because I was very kind of like pushy with my teachers. And for GCSE, you had to pick a language and you had to pick a humanity. But I just gave them a good enough case that, look, this is where I'm going to head. This is my specific route. I want to go into something like architecture or something that's like creative and visual. So in the end, they were kind of fine with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a massive like disconnect on how much we trust like young people to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah.
Like across the board, like career, everything. And I think that's a real shame that's a thing, because it does carry on like further on in life, so that you need to trust the youth to have decisions for themselves, like age of voting, like things like that. It does like honestly, I've met kids who are literally like 14, 15 that I put on the cover for issue 7. We did the Rise Together issue, and oh my gosh, like these kids are the most amazing kids I've ever met in my life. And some of them were 14. They were between the ages of like 14 to 18. They're youth climate activists for the UK Student Climate Network. And honestly, they were like every weekend, they were like organising all the rallies, all the school strikes. They were the organisers of them. They're honestly incredible. And they're so engaged with politics. Like Eli saved money to fly to the Amazon rainforest to see how they were affected by the climate crisis there and the fires that had just happened there. And came back to report that, I think it was to the European Parliament. He's 14. Like, why can't he vote? Like, why, like, this, honestly, it blows my mind that no one really, like, gives young people the benefit to make their own choices, you know?
The internet has just changed everything. It's really funny. I think about just a few years ago when I felt as a millennial, there was like this moment where we were on top of the world, and that all of we were kind of putting the wrongs right, and we had this voice and everything, and like social media was changing everything. And then so quickly, like the other week, I was just watching these TikToks of all of these Gen Zers taking the piss out of millennials with stuff that just like hit me to the core. I was like, oh my God, that's so well observed. That's so correct. And like, I watch a lot of TikToks from these kids who are like 20 years younger than me. And I'm like, oh shit, you're so much further ahead at 15 years old than I was. It's just incredible. And it's because they have this like from whenever they get their first smartphone, they have this like accelerated learning. They're learning so much more on social media, like especially a platform like TikTok. They're learning so much more there than they are in lessons. And I think that's only going to keep accelerating, and that's going to give us a brighter future with more informed kids who are finding out like what feels right and going down those paths. And I think that's a good thing.
No, absolutely. I think it's reasons like that also is like I work with quite a lot of young people with bricks is because I feel I personally don't believe in like hierarchy systems. Like I don't like understand it. Like it's really bizarre to me. I think that's why I'm not very good in the workplace, because I'm like, why are you telling me to do that in that tone of voice? Like I just don't like it. I'd like to believe, I know it's far-fetched, but I'd like to believe that everyone should have their own equal say regardless of where you are in the workplace. Like everyone's just as important. So I do work with a lot of kids, and I've done I think 3 now. We had nine young people on the youth climate cover last issue, and we also had Mary Copany, who's Little Miss Flint, who's the leading activist in Flint for the water crisis there. And I think I don't know, I feel like she started when she was like 6 or 7. She was so young. And even like Lizzo's like a massive fan of her. She's like sick. So she was on the last cover as well. And then also Desmond's amazing. So he was like the youngest ever drag kid at 11. Because it's like, I think these people are just like phenomenal, because I look back on it and I'm like, I wish I was that sure of myself when I was 11. Like, go you.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, I think they're amazing.
People like that are so important, because as you kind of talked about earlier, like growing up, there wasn't people around you to be able to look up to. But now if you're an 11-year-old kid who feels in that way, like there's a role model there. Like you wouldn't have had that years ago, because you might be like the one kid in your town, or like the one kid within like fucking miles. Whereas now you can go online and see people who are like you, and you can build a community that you just couldn't have happened before.
The drag kids are amazing, because when I started working with them like 2.5 years ago, I realised that they all knew each other. There was like some in Milan, and then there was like literally a few in New York, some in Boston. And then I was like on Instagram being like, how do I find like these collectives of drag kids? Because I wanted to do like a group cover, and we did it in New York. And I cast like a few from like different states in that area, like New York, Boston, Long Island, did it in Brooklyn. But they all knew that I was going to message them. They like outed me. They were like, this girl's looking for drag queens. And I'd speak to someone in Berlin, and they'd be like, to try and see if we could get them to shoot at home and Photoshop them in. So we had it a bit more like global rather than just in one place. And they all knew. They were like, oh yeah, Desmond told me that you were they all bloody knew each other. And I thought that was like amazing, because there was like all these kids who felt really out of place in like their hometowns and things, that had found this like online community of kids who were doing the exact same thing and loved drag. So they just built this like online community and like support network. And I think that's amazing.
I mean, you said earlier that you're not a big fan of Instagram, but obviously there are the positive sides to social as well.
Absolutely. Do you know, I have such a massive, I'm more in the hate side of social media at the moment, but I do have a love-hate relationship with it, because if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, because it's a free platform that was so accessible. I found every single person that I've worked with on Instagram, pretty much. Like I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have Instagram. So I really appreciate that and admire that as a platform. I just find it hard with my own personal boundaries to what I want out of the app. It doesn't benefit me. So it's like, it doesn't give me an option to turn off my DMs. Like I'm so accessible, and that's my problem. So it's not so much as like business side, like that's fine. But I find it really difficult, because I started a magazine, in all honesty, because I didn't want to be like a figurehead of anything. I was like, I'm more behind the scenes. I can do all this. I I was so bad at public speaking. I hated presentations at uni. Like, I'd shake and couldn't speak. Like, you wouldn't think that now. I don't shut up. But at the time, like, I really had to work on that, and I really wanted to be very behind the scenes. I didn't even want anyone to know it was me that was doing it in case I failed. I changed my name in the first 2 issues to someone different. So I found that really hard. And then with social media, all of a sudden, I just ended up building a platform because of bricks. Like, it just happened. I didn't ask for it. And it sounds really selfish and ungrateful, but I didn't want it. And that's what I think is really hard sometimes, that people don't understand. So it was like, I am quite a recluse. I like being at home. I'm not a massive, like, social party person. I'll go out with my friends, but I'm not like a massive networker. Like, I've got severe anxiety. Like, I find things like that really difficult. So things like being constantly accessible to some people. Someone messaged me and I don't respond, I feel like guilty. And I don't know, I can't post on my stories, I can't go on this, I feel guilty using the app. I'm like, why do I feel like that? They didn't feel guilty about messaging me at 2 a.m. and I don't want to respond. So it's like, I find it really difficult setting boundaries on social media. And I think that's the hardest thing that I find with it.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of like how we go about doing that. And I suppose the app developers have a lot of responsibility.
Well, I find it bizarre because they're always saying, like, Instagram, I think, are actually the worst for it, because they're saying that they want to improve our mental well-being. So they put like things that we can have like time caps on it, and we can have all these things, or they take away like likes, for instance. And I'm like, actually, likes isn't going to benefit me. Knowing how many people isn't going to benefit my mental health, really. It's not going to make much of a difference.
It's actually useful for me. It's like, if I put out a painting and it doesn't do as well in terms of the likes, then I know whether I need to kind of shift.
See, I'm not bothered about it. Like, I think what would benefit me more is them giving me the option to turn my DMs off at certain times of day. Like Twitter, you don't have to have DMs.
Yeah.
But it's their way of keeping you on that app engaged. Because I've lost count how many people that won't use text anymore. They just use Instagram DMs. And then it keeps me on the app more. And I'm like, can you just text me? Like, stop DMing me, because then I'm on the app longer and it stresses me out. So I think that's a thing that really needs to change.
You know, you can set up on Instagram an autoresponder. So you could have that saying, I don't check this inbox. If this is a serious inquiry, please email Tori at.
Oh my God, that's going to change my life. I'm going to do that for everything.
Yeah, there's quite a few photographers as well who will do don't DM me. Just like it will say in their bio, do not respond to DMs. So it tells people before we even message, like, don't expect anything. And I suppose that will reduce guilt as well. But I think what's important to think about is the fact that Instagram doesn't want you not to use it. So it's just going to come down to like a self-discipline of deleting the app from your phone between these hours of the day. Make it hard to go onto it. Like if I open my phone now, like Instagram's on my little like highlights at the bottom, and I'm going to go click straight onto it without even thinking. Whereas if I delete it and then open my phone, I'm like, okay, now it's a fucking ball ache to go to the app store, re-download it. Like, it adds that element of like just
resistance,
like grit, but like resist. Yeah, it adds that element of resistance of like, it's hard to do. So am I going to go straight to it? So I suppose if that's something you are struggling with, you don't want to have the messages pinging at you all the time. Just delete it, and then say, okay, well, if I need to do it for work, then maybe I'm going to, between these hours, I'm going to re-download it to my phone, do what I need to do on it, and then just delete it again after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to have like a healthy, at least I'm aware of it. That's the main thing. I'm aware of what, I think that's the main thing. But yeah, it's difficult because I think we all have our own individual boundaries and needs and wants and what we get out of social media. And it's like, at the moment, it's not working for everybody, you know?
So there's the awareness, and then there's the actual putting action in, because it's like, if you're addicted to something else like drugs or alcohol or something, you'll be fully aware that you're addicted to that because you're consuming it every single day. But it's that kind of actually going to Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that, putting that action in to get better, because I feel like that's only going to make you a stronger person going forward once you actually put the action in to kind of go against it.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing you've done so well in terms of social media is you use it as a platform to be honest, and there's never going to be you just putting up something to create a false narrative. Why did the decision for, because we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, tell us why you decided to kind of be really open and honest about the cleaning thing?
Long story short, I had a really, really tough year, like 2 years ago. And another reason why I disliked social media was because someone I'd never met or I didn't know who they were was harassing me online, which sounds like really bad. Like, I hate saying it because it's like when you think of like cyberbullying and like online bullying, it's like a really teenage issue, but it was actually way more severe than that.
Yeah.
Like, this person was like emailing my clients being like, don't work with Tori, she's an abuser. So I started hating, I almost wanted to quit my magazine. Like, I didn't want any form of like public life, nothing. So I took some time out, and because I had to process what was going on.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel really weird still about being really accessible on the internet sometimes. It's because of that situation. And I was just like, I was cancelling all my work, like left, right and centre. I was meant to go on the BBC to like talk about politics and how Brexit was going to affect Caerphilly, which is where I'm from. And I was like, oh my God, that's my dream, because no one's ever listened to me like politically and took what I've said on board. So I was like, but I didn't do it. Like, I literally didn't want to do anything, even if it was like my dream or something. It was really important to me. Like, I really lost that for a good period of time. So I was like, what can I do? And my flatmate at the time was like, well, if you need to make money, I've done it now and again, is I have a cleaning agency, and every time you're stressed, you clean. And I was like, yeah, you're right. If I have a stressful email, I'll go and do the dishes for 10 minutes and come back and then write it. So I started thinking about it and was like, actually, I'm going to do that. So then it came to something like people posting about their achievements online constantly. I have, in this sense, I don't think this is normal, but the most successful friends. Like, my friend Florence is like, broke a record the other day for her book. And it's like, I have like multiple friends who are writing like books. I walk down the street and I can literally see 4 of my mates on a billboard in Brixton. It's mental. And I don't think that's normal. It's amazing. And I'm so proud of all my friends. But when you're feeling really shit and then you see all your friends doing like overachieving, like on Times Square, billboards. Like, my friend Ash is like a pop star superstar. So it's just like, that's not normal, like, for all your friend network to be like really successful, even though it's amazing. And I was like, but how do I define success? Because at the moment I've learned to clean the shower amazingly. And to me, that's a success, and that's why I've succeeded in the last couple of months. So I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, my dad's like the most supportive person in the world. Like, and so is my mum actually. They've both been very good with me and understanding that like my brain just doesn't operate on like a 9-to-5 level where I can just sit in an office and do the same thing every day. So even though we come from no money and they've wanted me to do well, they've also been really supportive of just letting me do what I've wanted to do and trusted me that I would just get by and it would be fine.
Yeah.
But my dad was like, you shouldn't open up about you cleaning, because if you do, it looks like you're not getting enough work, and that your work, maybe people might think you're not good enough and no one's working with you. And I completely understood what he was saying, but at the same time I was like, this is every single person's anxiety, and it's a hierarchy system, and it only reserves creative success. If we don't talk about our side hustles and how we actually make our work, it only reserves it for the middle class. So I had this like long thinking about it, and I was like, I'm about to get the tube, and I just finished cleaning, and I was like, I'm just going to post my cleaning videos that I make when I'm cleaning. And I did, and then I got on the tube for like half an hour so I couldn't change my mind. So then, because I was like, I don't want to regret it, and then I came back, my phone blew the hell up. I come back out and it literally was everywhere. Like, it was like, then other people was like clocked onto it, and already within that half an hour, because I used like a Instagram transparency hashtag that wasn't being used. I hijacked this hashtag that wasn't being used on Instagram. And loads of other people started opening up about their creative like side hustles. And it was like really amazing to see, because they felt exactly how I felt, that they felt like they were like not successful enough, or not this or not that. And actually it's the best thing to have a side job, because it only allows you to do what you love doing. It's like a stepping stone. And also it's like, I'm like an abled person that was born in this country. I'm so happy that I can do that job. Like, there's no, like, the fact that I even have a job that keeps me stable is a privilege. So when people like complain about their day jobs, I'm like, don't complain about your day job, even if you, like, you might hate it, or it's not what you want to be doing, but just see it as like, it's putting a roof over your head, you're able to do it. There's a lot of people that can't get that job, or this, that, and the other. So it's just trying to think differently about what these jobs were to people. And I think there has been like a little bit of a shift since, because I've seen a lot of people now being less embarrassed about talking about their side hustles and jobs, and it's made Instagram, in my creative scene anyway, like a little bit more bearable. I wasn't doing anything groundbreaking, and that's the thing. I was literally posting things of like me cleaning the shower, and people be like, oh my God, Tori, oh my, and I'm like, take a step back and actually think what you're praising me for. I'm literally doing something so mundane and basic, but because no one posts their everyday life on Instagram, you're now praising me for it, and I shouldn't be praised for it. It should be the norm. It's really bizarre.
We always talk on this show, we've spoken to a lot of people who've kind of left the 9 to 5 behind. And we know that a lot of our listeners find that aspirational, because we'll get the DMs of people saying, I'm working on this to eventually be able to give up my 9 to 5. But what we spoke about recently in an intro was, especially during this time and where everything is uncertain and we have a pandemic and all of that stuff, is like, get a survival job. And like, that's the terminology. It's a survival job, and it's something that is going to keep you going. And like, you can be so grateful for that, and you can learn to love it, whatever it is, because it is your survival job, and it's the method to allow you to do all of the other stuff that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wish social media was like a more honest place, because I think it's very rose tinted, and it's nice to see that, I don't know, at the time there was like a lot of people speaking about like diversity and this, that, but it was always a very image focused thing. It was a very like in your face, just looking, but we weren't talking about like diversity in terms of like class, or, you know, like those things were still not being talked about or done in the right way. So I'm happy that a lot more people at the moment seem to be talking about like how class affects like the creative industry and things like that. It's nice to see.
Yeah, you wrote something on class recently that I thought was so interesting, that people of privilege don't understand things like when you graduate, if you're not from privilege, then you're not able to get the internship because you haven't got whoever funding and paying for you. You haven't got enough like cash to allow you to do that internship, and how classism actually is like holding back a whole swathe of creatives, because they're not able to access the entry level stuff to get themselves on that ladder.
Yeah, that's it. It's a massive problem. I think it's like with internships, that's like in people's head, like the lowest form of thing you can do, that's the start. And if you can't do that, and especially when a lot of like entry level jobs, it's like you need 2 years experience. How the hell are you going to get that 2 year experience if you can't even afford to do the internship to get that experience? So it's not, the system isn't built for working class people, unfortunately. And even though people think that that's not a thing, it's a massive thing. I know so many people, because I'm on the other side of it. I get a lot of people asking for internships at Bricks. And it's like, a lot of people cannot afford, because I offer remote internships, and I meant like, I can't pay them, but they don't spend any money. So that's kind of like my priority, is if you intern with me, because I don't pay myself on Bricks. It's a labor of love. No one gets that. So it's like, I won't allow you to put money into it. And sometimes I mentor them. So like one of my old editorial assistants setting up a magazine, I mentor her for free every week to set that up. So it's like, I kind of like give it back, because I think actually I wish when I was living in Cardiff that I had someone mentoring me for free every week. That would have helped me out so much. So I think it's not only just about, kicking off about this on social media, it's like, what are you going to do about it? And I think that's really important. So I do try and offer internships to people who are remote. So for instance, like I've taken on someone recently in Birmingham who can't afford to live in London and get the experience. So I've been giving her the experience, and we've been doing it all online together, which I think is invaluable. And at the same time, it's a bit more the norm at the moment, like in lockdown. So it doesn't seem really out of place that I do that. But yeah, I think less kicking off, and it's good to educate people on social media, but it's like I also can't be kicking off about all these things and trying to educate people if I'm not doing anything to counteract it myself. And I think that's really important.
What would your advice be to someone who is from kind of like a lower income family who wanted to get into the creative industry but doesn't have those opportunities that someone of more wealth would have?
I think for me, I did things so differently, and I look back and I just wish I had a mentor or someone, and I know that's really inaccessible and not everyone has that, and I think that's like a massive shame. It's like an accessibility thing. I think my advice would probably is to find someone who's kind of like in a similar situation that also wants to kind of get into a particular industry and get talking to them. So even if it's like they can sit there and help each other, if that makes sense. Because I think a community aspect of something, it doesn't always have to be by yourself. And I think if I had like a community even online, because at that time when I was younger, like Instagram wasn't a thing, I definitely try and make like the drag kids are doing, like finding your own community, because that's entirely free, And another thing is definitely a confidence thing, an imposter syndrome. But people want to get into things and don't think other people want to work with them because they don't have anything to show. It's just an idea. But actually there's so many people like that. Like even now, 6 years on, I still get that. I still message people for their emails on Instagram and like, they're not going to respond to me. They're not going to want to work with me. Why would they want to work with me? And then they always do. No one ever says no. So it's like, like, there's so many people out there that want to work and don't have anyone to work with. So I think it's just like having confidence in yourself to break out of that weakness of feeling a bit, it's normal, but feeling a bit nervous of, getting yourself out there, to just try and talk to people and see if they want to collaborate. I think that would be probably my advice.
I love the idea of the mentor thing, because as you were saying that, I was thinking like literally like the town I'm from, if someone DM'd me saying, I'm from the town that you're from, I want to go and do something similar to you did, I would fucking help them. Like, I don't know what it is in me that I'm like, if it was someone from somewhere completely different, I might not be so inclined for it, but I'd really want to help that person. So I feel like, if you're like, do your research, find someone who's come from where you've come from and changed their lives and moved into what you want to do, and contact them. Yes, they might say no, they might ignore you, but just keep finding those people, because there will be someone who's come from a similar background to you who is where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I think that's why I try and mentor people, especially the ones that have like come and helped me with bricks, and I already have like a relationship with them, and I know what their weaknesses are and their strengths and how they are as a person, to try and like help them. Because Nicole's amazing. Like she did this second same with me. She did a final major project, started up a magazine in Cardiff. I met her because I lecture occasionally there on the fashion courses. And then she came and interned with me from back when I had a studio here for a month. And then she was like, actually, I love magazines. That's what I want to do. I'm going to make my own. And she made her final major project on Black culture in Wales, which I think is so important. That's something that no one discusses. Like, there are Black communities in Wales that are just so ignored. And actually, they're the majority of the bloody culture for the last, 100 years, especially when it comes to, Town and the docks and, everyone who moved over to work at, Cardiff docks. So she kind of, is educating people on Black history in Wales, which I think is, amazing. So I've been mentoring her free once a week, just like an hour or two, like on a Monday morning, and just helping her just do things like, why don't you set up a Twitter, why don't you do a paid newsletter, and then I teach her how I do that. So I wish I had that. Like, I genuinely, and that's why I do it back, because I wish I had that. And I'd say I owe my entire career to like one or two people. And one of them is Ashley Kane from Days, because she found me on Instagram like 4 years ago when I was making a zine. And I was at my first interview, and she stayed in touch with me, and she's over the years just became like a really good friend of mine, also clean her house. So it's like, I love that weird relationship I had with her, from being like a client to a friend to cleaning her house. So she also gives me quite a lot of like job opportunities when she's too busy at Days. She'll like recommend them to me. So, and it's just little things like that. It's just like really, really helped me out. And I owe her probably the majority of my career at this point, but she's my mentor without her even knowing. We never had that conversation of me being like, you're my mentor, but she is. I have like loads of mentors, and they don't know that they're my mentor. So I think it's just nice. I think having a creative community and having like people who do similar things around you is really important, because you can't know everything.
Yeah, it's such good advice. And I think when you reach out to mentors, if they say yes to you, it's because they see themselves in you, and they look at this young person. For me, it's all about ambition, because if I see the ambition, then I know my time's not going to be wasted. I know that I can give you these few little pieces of advice, and you're going to run with them. It's like me and Adam when we do like one-on-one calls with people. It's like, when you feel the ambition, you know that you've not just wasted an hour of your time in giving them all this advice, because you know they're going to put it into action.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You're so inspiring. I think like you're doing so much great work. The magazine is great. You're great. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I've loved talking to you both. It's been really nice, actually.
Where can people find you online, Tori?
So my Instagram is Tori West, Tori, not with a Y. I'm not conservative, and West like Kanye. And Bricks is...
But no DMs.
Don't DM me. My email is on the button. No, I actually fully welcome praise. That's my boundary. If someone wants to come in my DMs and praise me for my work, that's fine. Just don't ask me for things, and I lose everything. Don't pretend it's my emails, because I'll lose your username and never be able to respond. And
Sure.
And then Bricks is Bricks_magazine on both Twitter. I think TikTok might be the same, and Instagram. And also Nicole, who I'm speaking, who does the Black History in Wales magazine. That's Docs magazine, if anyone wants to look that up, because she's doing some great things too.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me.